First, we want to check in with our media partners from thevoiceofoc.org for an update on what's happening this week in Orange County government and politics.
Here to talk about issues in the news right now, we welcome the editor-in-chief of Voice of OC, Norberto Santana. Nice to have you with us again, Norberto. And how have things changed in Costa Mesa since last November's election?
People thought that things were going to slow down there a little bit after the November election. A place like Costa Mesa, which was seen as the West Coast version of Wisconsin, where there was a lot of controversy and conflict between Republicans and labor officials. Things had slowed down a little bit after November. People had calmed down. Mayor Jim Righeimer was using a little bit softer rhetoric. This week, though, a little bit of deja vu, and as the 2014 elections loom, it looks like the situation there is basically heating up again. This week, the employee union there went into court to try to block a jail outsourcing plan that the council majority wants to move forward with. At the same time, last night at the city council meeting, they voted to move forward with another city charter. This was a kind of a plan that was rejected by about 60% of the voters last November. The idea was to, I guess, begin again and start pushing back to see if they can get that on the ballot. It's, again, cuts to the fundamental differences between these two sides. That council majority has given the new direction to the city manager there, which is outsource as much as you legally can and try to avoid layoffs. Now, that is a big difference from a year ago where they just issued blanket about 200 layoffs notices, which really got the situation very, very tense. But talking to a lot of observers and beginning to see what's happening on the ground, it's clear that that level of confrontation is beginning to rise again, and almost always happens before elections.
Okay, now, changing topics on this thing. Weeks ago, folks at Honda Center gave Airmark notice that they were going to go in-house with their concessions, and they notified everybody involved, and it seemed they'd been working toward that goal. But now the state legislature suddenly has gotten involved. What's happening there?
A lot of controversy over the plan there to essentially, it's over enterprise zones at the state level. These zones, similar to redevelopment, have really come in play. The governor wants to get rid of them. Here at the Honda Center, there was a huge controversy when about 500 workers got layoff notices. Later on, it was disclosed that many of those, that company would get a tax credit for basically rehiring workers after firing them. Well, that kind of tension in the air was really palpable. Workers hit to the stadium. We can listen here from one of the workers talk about the level of frustration that really pulled them out into the streets there in Anaheim.
Concession workers. Look, I don't know what's going on. I am not in control of that part of my life, and it's a very scary feeling.
The scary feeling now is almost in some ways back to the sponsors of these enterprise zones. Democrats in large portion, people like Jordan Brandman in Anaheim, are calling on them to rehire the workers. And also now State Assemblyman Tom Daley has sponsored legislation which would essentially remove that type of an incentive for a company to lay off workers and then rehire other people and get a tax credit. Again, it speaks to sort of the different views of government and who is to get the benefits from tax incentives. Labor groups, and again now the state legislature has chimed in to say that's not an appropriate use of your tax dollars to incentivize companies in that manner.
I know Jerry Brown is pushing to completely reshape the enterprise zone, as you mentioned. What can he do?
Well, he
can
get
just
rid of these.
go in and get rid of the whole thing?
Yes, absolutely, and that's in the current budget plan. That's why this battle has gotten so intense across, and what you see in Anaheim is basically this issue playing out at the local level, and this is happening in communities across the state.
Well, is it true now that Tom Daley's provision aimed at just Honda Center now and not to all of these employers statewide?
Well, that's true. I haven't seen the actual language of the bill it's been put in. According to sources, that is exactly who it's been targeted at, and of course, it's made news up and across the state.
Mm-hmm. Let's talk about Santa Ana. They approved a 2-year budget. Is it pretty much status quo, or were there some surprises in there?
Well, you know, this month in June, cities across all of Orange County, in fact, all across California, will begin this debate of setting priorities for their budget. In Santa Ana, as you mentioned, it's a much more stable budget. You remember last year, the last 2-year budget that was adopted in Santa Ana, the city was on the brink of bankruptcy. They ended up outsourcing their fire services to the Orange County Fire Authority. That really has made a big difference in terms of moving the balance sheet a bit. This month, we at Voice of OC partnered with many community groups in Santa Ana to actually begin to sponsor youth media workshops where we brought a lot of young people together to basically go over the budget and begin to talk about what these priorities. These are the kind of discussions that many residents in their towns can have with city officials. This is the kind of feedback that they need. I was going to cut here to the session that we had where 18-year-old Zulema Valera challenged city council members about the spending patterns that she saw, and we'll see the interesting response that she got back from city council member Vince Sarmiento.
Okay, very quick.
I want to know if the police department really needs $104 million, and why do we need 6 units responding to 3 suspects being questioned? How much money are we wasting having these officers just standing around?
Look, I think you're absolutely right, and that's why we're going through a restructuring of our department. The department's been kind of outdated. We realize that we need to revisit the city and how we govern it and how we monitor it, how we take care of it, how we police it. And what we've been finding as we're researching the department more and more is that there's better ways of using our resources. And maybe we don't need to spend 70% of our general fund on the police. I'm confident that if we retool or revisit how we police, I think our city is going to be fine. Most of our families, most of our residents, they're people who, who just want to live their lives. Your parents just want to raise you, send you to school, make sure you come home safely.
That's the kind of debate that you can have in your local town if you show up to the budget workshops that are expecting you across the region.
Mm-hmm. Okay, what's this, I understand something about fracking going on here in Orange County?
Another issue that hasn't gotten a lot of attention, a company called Signal Hill Petroleum from LA has been pulling out permits in 7 different cities. It's a national issue across. It's finally showed up here at the local level. Lots of people are nervous about the environmental impacts and who gets the profits from these operations.
Very good. All right. Thank you so much, Norberto. We'll talk to you again next week.
Thanks, Jess.
For more on these stories and other political news throughout Orange County, go to voiceofoc.org.